Apricorns. They are a somewhat irrelevant part of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, as you can really only make Pokeballs out of them, right? But what if I were to base an entire Nuzlocke variant around the number and location of apricorn trees? Well, that's exactly what I did 1 year ago by creating something called a Pokemon Apricorn Lock. However, I showcased it through live streams and highlight videos, as opposed to letting it get front and center with its own video. So today, I've decided to once again tackle this challenge in the Johto remakes, in hopes of making this type of Nuzlocke more known to the public. The rules are pretty simple, as they follow your typical Nuzlocke rules, but I can only catch encounters on routes that are home to apricorn trees. Additionally, the number of trees on that route determine how many Pokemon I'm allowed to catch. So for example, on Route 37, I'm allowed to catch 3 separate encounters, but in Mount Mortar, I can't capture a single Pokemon. I am allowing myself to purchase 7 Pokeballs before the Slowpoke well, but after defeating Team Rocket in there, the only way to obtain Pokeballs is by giving apricorns to Kurt. By the way, I'm also able to use any Pokeballs that I find as items on the ground. Anyways, with all that out of the way, it's time to attempt a Pokemon Heart Gold Apricorn Lock. I began our journey by calling myself TQ and making my way over to Professor Elm's lab. Now, the more I thought about static encounters, the more I realized they shouldn't count unless they occur in an area with an apricorn tree. So technically, I'm not even allowed to use my starter since New Barktown doesn't have an apricorn tree. I still have to make my way through the beginning section of the game, but after that, the Nuzlocke will really begin. On Route 30, I received the most important item in this challenge, the apricorn box. Also, have you guys ever noticed that your character makes a pretty weird motion when collecting apricorns? Anyways, after a meaningless rival battle, I called the visual Anti a goofy name before finally obtaining Pokeballs. On Route 29, I caught a Pidgey before heading north into Route 46, where even though I can't get the apricorns yet, I was still able to catch a Spearow and Rattata. Route 30 was home to 2 apricorn trees, but the only new mon I was able to find was a Caterpie. And finally, on Route 31, I added a Bellsprout to the team. After leveling up the team a bit, I challenged Faulkner. His Pidgey went down to a couple of quick attacks, but Pidgeotto was much more difficult. I paralyzed him with Butterfree before switching into Pidgey. However, I was dealing less damage than he was healing with Roost, and eventually Pidgeotto landed a critical tackle, already handing us our first death. Luckily, Spearow easily finished the job. Similar to Route 30, Route 33 had 2 apricorn trees, but the only new Pokemon I could find was a Hoppip, who will most likely be death fodder. I then took down Proton in the Slowpoke well, meaning from here on out, I'm not allowed to buy Pokeballs from any Pokemarts. Moving on to Bugsy, I paralyzed his Scyther before it went for U-turn, nearly knocking out Butterfree. Metapod came out, and, well, it's a Metapod, so Scyther returned to the field, only to be taken out by Spearow. Last up was Kakuna, who got pecked to death. As we were leaving Azalea Town, my rival tried to steal our apricorns. His Ghastly and Zubat didn't stand a chance, and he tried to stall me out by using Synthesis with Bayleaf, but Spearow eventually took him down. Since there were no routes with apricorn trees in between the 2nd and 3rd gym, it was already time for Whitney. Her Clefairy didn't stand a chance, as one bite and Hyper Fang did the trick. My plan was to paralyze Miltank with Butterfree, but I never knew she was holding a Lumberry. The only reason I didn't lose any Mons here was because I got really lucky as Miltank used a rollout twice, only to miss after the first or second turn. So thanks to my good fortune, Raticate eventually whittled her down with Hyper Fang. Finally, Route 35 had a single Apricorn, so I got myself a Nidoran female before using the static Sudowoodo as my encounter for Route 36. Now, Route 37 had 3 Apricorn trees. That's great, right? Well, not when I could only find a freaking Stantler. Anyways, the rival battle in the Burn Tower wasn't too difficult, as Butterfree handled Gastly and Zubat, Sudowoodo took down Magnemite, and Nidorina slowly worked away at Bayleaf. The difficulty stayed just about the same with Morty, since I had a Raticate that knows Crunch. The only Mon that stood a chance was Gengar, but thanks to him missing Hypnosis, we received the 4th badge without any issues. I decided to head left of Ecruteak City first, meaning I was able to catch a Magnemite on Route 38. I also didn't bother with Route 39 since I encountered a Farfetch'd, and you already know I didn't want to catch that. Over in Cianwood City, Eusine challenged us to a battle over his jealousy of Suicune. Luckily, I had super effective counters for his Drowsy and Haunter, while Electrode was a bit scary with the Thunder, but Raticate eventually knocked him out. I was expecting to defeat Chuck relatively easily, but that was not the case. Primeape couldn't withstand 2 aerial aces from Fearow, so Poliwrath already came out. He knocked me down to 3 HP, while I forced his Citrus Berry to activate. Not to mention, Fearow was also paralyzed, so I switched to Butterfree. I still couldn't take his Surfs and Body Slams very well though, so I had to keep using Super Potions while slowly whittling Poliwrath down. However, Chuck used a Hyper Potion of his own, and then landed a critical Body Slam, taking out Butterfree. At this point, he was low enough for a couple of Vine Whips to finish him off, but losing Butterfree is definitely a shame. After a bit of grinding, I went straight on to Jasmine. I gave Raticate Dig, so her 2 Magnemites got O-Code. My plan for Steelix was to put it to sleep with Weepinbell, and then spam Sonic Booms with my new Magneton, since Steelix can't hit him too well. However, thanks to some defense drops, I switched into Sudowoodo, as I was hoping he would stay asleep for a bit longer, but that wasn't the case, so we lost our fake tree. After another round of sleep though, I was finally able to whittle him down and finish him off with a few Vine Whips. It was clear that I needed to rebuild the team a bit, so I went back to Route 37 in order to catch a Growlithe. I then caught a Flaffy and Goldeen on Route 42, which all give me a much better diversity of typings. Another training session later, and it was time for Price. My new Magneton handled Seal, while Seaking had no issues taking down Piloswine. Dugong took forever to die, since he kept on going for rest, so I nearly ran out of sparks. In the end though, we got the 7th gym badge. My team was really starting to come along at this point, and that was proven when I didn't even have any of my Mons get knocked down to yellow health in the next rival battle. Even Archer was more difficult because he almost killed Seaking and Raticate with that powerful Houndoom, but we eventually brought an end to Team Rocket. I also decided to grab a couple of backup team members on my way to Blackthorn City, like Lickitung on Route 44 and Geodude on Route 46. I was expecting at least one Pokemon to go down against Claire, but that was surprisingly not the case. Magneton took care of Gyarados, and I went back to the Goldenrod department store in order to teach Blizzard to Seaking, which came in handy when knocking out both of Claire's Dragonairs. Kingdra was by far the toughest opponent, as I had to put it to sleep and paralyze it throughout the fight. However, thanks to having plenty of hyper potions, Raticate managed to whittle her down with strength, giving us all 8 gym badges in the Johto League. Before reaching the Pokemon League, our goofy rival challenged us to one last battle. However, all of his mons got one shot, besides his annoying Meganium that spammed Poison Powder and Synthesis, but it still wasn't much of a threat. Now that everyone on my team is to level 47, here's a look at them before taking on the Elite Four. No matter who I gave my phone number to, I could never receive a Leaf or Firestone, so I'm rocking out with some non-fully evolved mons. Nonetheless, I feel pretty good about all of my movesets, so let's find out if we can complete this Nuzlocke. Will was up first, and he was by far the easiest member. Magneton took care of both Zatus, Jinx, and Slowbro, while it only took a single flamethrower from Growlithe to knock out Exeggutor. We got off to a good start against Koga, as Growlithe OHKO'd his Ariados. I thought I'd be fine by using Raticate for his Muck, but little did I know, Gunk Shot was powerful enough to take us out in a single hit. It then became a stall fest with Minimize, but luckily Magneton's Magnet Bomb can never miss, so Muck eventually died. After that, it was a clean one-shot sweep. Bruno was another relatively easy defeat, as a Seaking outlasted Hitmontop, Fearow had no issues taking down Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, and Weepinbell one-shot Onix. My only worry was Machamp, and for good reason. He nearly took out Weepinbell multiple times with Cross Chop, so I was forced to heal a bunch. I finally put him to sleep and got an opening to send out Fearow, who took him out with a few Drill Pecks. Last up for the Elite Four was Karen. Her Umbreon went down much easier than I thought it would, thanks to some good luck with Paralysis. Houndoom came out next, only to be switched for Vileplume, who went down quickly to a Drill Peck. She then sent Gengar out onto the field, which I put to sleep with Weepinbell before going to Fearow. I knew she couldn't put much damage on me, but it could go for Destiny Bond right before I was going to kill it, which is exactly what happened. Perfect. Seaking finished off Houndoom and Murkrow, but now I'm going into the champion battle with a measly 4 Pokemon. The only person standing between us and becoming the first Apricorn Lock champion was Lance. Gyarados immediately went down to a discharge, so Charizard was up next. I did a huge chunk of damage with Waterfall, and I was going to finish him off with Blizzard, but then Lance switched to one of his Dragonites, so it ended up being a really good accidental read on my part. Magneton easily handled the second Dragonite with the combination of Thunder Wave and Discharge. Charizard then got finished off, before Magneton had no issues knocking out Aerodactyl. Lance was now down to his final Dragonite, so I sacked off Growlithe in order to heal Magneton so he could get off a Thunder Wave before going down. Weepinbell added a bit of chip damage before it came down to Seaking. Thanks to Dragonite being paralyzed though, this derpy orange fish outsped and landed one Blizzard to make us the new champions of the Johto region. Well, I gotta say, the first official Pokemon Apricorn Lock was a success. It was very interesting, as I had to be careful when catching Pokemon, since usually I was limited to a couple of fast, heavy, and friend balls, along with some Ultra Balls that I found on the ground. And if you want to make this Nuzlocke variant even harder, then you can always add on something like no healing in battle. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. For now though, have a great rest of your day, and until next time, deuces!